Hello, my name is Kelly Busher. I'm with Banner Associates, and thank you for joining us for this presentation on the Lake Poinsett Management Plan. We presented this information in a public meeting on September 14th up at Lake Poinsett. Big thank you to everybody that was able to join us. I thought we had a great discussion that morning. And we're now providing this copy of the presentation online for those of you that could not make it. And a big thank you to all of you watching it right now. We appreciate it. So with that, I'd like to share a little information about what we're doing and why we're doing it for Lake Poinsett, as well as discuss the findings of the survey that we did earlier this year. So when we started the work on the Lake Poinsett Management Plan, we put together a vision statement of what we were trying to accomplish to help guide us as we went through this process. So as you can see here on the slide, the Lake Poinsett Management Plan will be developed to identify and prioritize critical needs and solutions for Lake Poinsett, with a focus on water quality, water quantity, fish and wildlife habitat, tourism, recreation, economic development, roads, land use, and other identified areas. Once those key needs have been identified, the plan is going to identify solutions, costs, and funding sources from private, local, state, and federal resources. And our overarching goal with all of this is to empower all of you, the Lake Poinsett community, including the area businesses, landowners, cabin owners, residents, and bring together those folks with governmental agencies to work together so we can maximize, develop, and build on Lake Poinsett's resources and opportunities. So that's the vision statement, the mission statement that we came up with that has been guiding our work on this as we move forward. So I'd like to share with you a video that we put together. This has been posted on the website. This was also shown at the open house that we did earlier this year in June. But I thought this video did a great job of explaining why we're doing this management plan, discussing the passion that folks have for protecting and improving Lake Poinsett. So I'd like to share that with you again right now.
What is it that I love about Lake Poinsett? Things happen at Lake Poinsett that just don't happen anyplace else.
I love Lake Poinsett Recreation Area. I love Lake Poinsett. I grew up fishing here.
I grew up here. I've been at Lake Poinsett since I was probably about this tall.
Just a beautiful place to be outdoors. It's like a gem. We really enjoy it here.
The people around here, the sunsets, the surrounding communities are just fantastic, and it just made us feel welcome the day we moved in. Hi, my name is Scott Ross. I'm the current Lake Poinsett Association president. We decided to come to Lake Poinsett 14 years ago. There was a lot of things going on at the lake that we didn't know anything about. Just listening to some of the residents around the lake and going to some of the meetings, it was something I was interested in. What can I do for my part to help out the lake grow and become a better community?
I have been involved with the Lake Task Force, and what the Lake Task Force is a group of people that recognize that everybody's in charge, but nobody's in charge. We have the 800 residents that have cabins around Lake Poinsett.
We have a variety of different towns around. We have 3 different counties around the lake, and so there's a variety of different stakeholders involved with the lake.
So as a group of people, if you don't have a roadmap, you're never going to get to where you're going. We worked with the Lake Poinsett Association, we worked with the Water District, and we worked with the Sewer District in order to collect us together so that we have the opportunity to speak with one voice. What this process does is says that we at Lake Poinsett absolutely can have a voice as long as we pull everybody together and we speak with that one voice. What the survey is really going to identify is those things, those primary things that people really want. A task force really want these 3 entities to help solve and then develop an action plan that ultimately can be successful and doable. When you talk to people about problems at the lake, one of the things that they always focus on is water quality. If you don't have water quality, you don't really have a lake.
As far as DANR's focus, it's water quality, so that's what we're looking at. We monitor the water quality of the lake, as well as we do implementation projects or watershed restoration projects within that basin to improve water quality. So those are the two main angles that we come at Lake Poinsett from: monitoring and implementation. As far as monitoring goes, the lake has been monitored for a long time, since the 70s and 80s, probably the most heavily monitored and sampled lake in the state.
My name is John Pansky. I live on East Lake Drive. The Lake Poinsett Water Project District was established back in the 80s to help clean up the waters in Lake Poinsett. There's a number of things that we do to accomplish that. We work with homeowners and we provide incentives to help them pay for any shoreline stabilization. The whole goal is to try and keep the shorelines from eroding into the lake, providing nutrients for plant growth and algae growth, and just kind of clean up the water.
So in Lake Poinsett, we're looking at nutrients that cause algae to grow in the lake, primarily looking at agricultural sources further up in the watershed, as well as some localized sources, everything from fertilizer on people's lawns to picking up their pet waste around the lake. Those things can contribute.
We also monitor the lake outlet. There's a set of gates on the lake outlet to prevent the Big Sioux River from backing up into the lake. Letting that water into the lake really just provides fuel for all the algae growth and all the things that we're trying to get rid of. So just to the west of the gates, there's a small channel, which is the outlet of the lake. And there's a considerable sandbar across there, and that tends to get plugged up a lot of times during the summertime. So we tend to clean it out every fall so that we're prepared for any spring runoff. If we get a heavy runoff here, we like to have that open so the water can get out into the Big Sioux River before the river comes up. The biggest goal for the Lake Poinsett Water Project District is to improve water quality in the lake. That's really our goal. It's been our mission right from the get-go.
And then the other main thing is E. coli, or looking at fecal bacteria. And the main source of that in Lake Poinsett is most likely to be human sources directly around the lake. That's one of the big reasons we want to look at getting that sewer system expanded, moving away from the individual septic systems.
My name is Pat Carey. I work with Banner Associates, and we've been the engineer for the Lake Poinsett Sanitary District since they began their first project back in the late 1980s. Prior to that, there were individual on-site systems around the lake, meaning that everybody had their own septic tank and drain field. Some operated adequately and some did not, and that kind of led to the interest in forming a sanitary district and making some improvements to the wastewater systems around the lake. So at that time, what that meant was they retained the septic tanks, but put in small diameter gravity sewers that collected the gray water and thus got rid of the drain fields and the direct conduit to the lake, but kept a lot of the other infrastructure in place. So currently there's 5 systems around the lake, and the main area still yet to be served is West and Northwest Lake Drive, along with a small part of Sunset Park Estates. There's approximately 200 homes in that area that will ultimately be connected to a system. A few years ago, the sanitary district acquired some land to build the retention pond for that system. So they have started the process, and it's a matter of planning and funding the rest of it.
My name is Isaac Rubendahl. I'm the park manager at Lake Poinsett Recreation Area. What makes Lake Poinsett Recreation Area so special is that it's on one of the largest lakes in South Dakota. We have 5 boat ramps that we take care of. We have about 3 miles of hiking trails out on the park. But also what we have in the park is we have a fish cleaning station, we have an amphitheater, we have 112 electric campsites, 4 cabins as well, camping cabins. We have opportunities for fishing, recreational boating, as well as hunting in the fall. We try to be open arms to anyone that is looking for an experience at Lake Poinsett Recreation Area, and that's kind of a goal for our department. If you're bringing your kids, we're hoping they want to come back when they're older, providing experiences that each generation can take along with them and have for the future. Aquatic invasive species is an important thing to mitigate and making sure that we're not allowing into our lake, because a lot of times with invasive species, if they're introduced, they're there forever. At each of our accesses, not only at the park, we have big orange signs educating the public on what to do when you're launching your boat and taking your boat out of the water. And then we have a boat wash station that people can use water to rinse off their boat and making sure aquatic invasive species don't infiltrate our lake.
It's important to have local control simply because the people around the lake would really want to have some say on what goes on around the lake and in the county, to be honest. So it's important to have some local representation. The county zoning board has actually members from throughout the county. There's a couple from Lake Poinsett, and there's a lot from different townships around the lake. So there's a good cross-section of people that represent all different aspects of the county to make sure everybody's fairly represented.
It's all in the empowerment of having the capacity of pulling people together and saying, you know, this really, really works, especially when we have the capacity of speaking with one voice. That's what the whole task force's process has been all about. It's downright inspiring.
The biggest concern about development around this lake is make sure that we are not working contradictory to what the task force goals are. We need to make sure that we can develop and create a healthy economy, but we also need to be considerate of the natural beauty of this lake. Anything that's going to affect the quality of the lake or the quality of life around the lake, we need to make sure we can preserve what we have or improve on what we have and not take a step backwards. Establish what the goals are, prioritize those goals, and come up with a way of funding the things that are really important to the residents around the lake.
And success can be measured by the water quality of the lake. What are the nutrient concentrations in the lake? How much algae is the lake growing? And are we seeing any exceedances of the E. coli standard? Those are the main three things that we're looking at in water quality in the lake.
And so what's important about the action plan is that we're all coming together and looking to make this area better for not only people that live here and work here, but also the folks that come here on a one weekend every single year.
I think the biggest thing why we need the public involved, because we are the public. And you as a resident on the lake, you have a lot of voice. If you don't like something, this is your opportunity to say something. If you want something, this is your opportunity to say something. You have to be that voice.
And one of the things that I really realized is the immense amount of power and influence that you have when you can pull people together. What's really inspiring is to see all three of these boards working together almost as if they're one unit.
If we consolidate our forces, it's going to be a big difference on how successful we can be and what we can accomplish.
All the groups were working for a main goal, but we were working independently of each other. And with this task force, it brings us all together so we can have a stronger voice.
I'm just proud to be part of this task force and really looking forward to making some progress and improving things on the lake.
You know what you get at Lake Poinsett? You get sunsets that celebrate the end of the day, a sunrise that makes promises about the day. You can sit on a sailboat with your grandchildren and literally, and I mean this literally, feel the earth spin. Things happen at Lake Poinsett that never happen in the city. It gets you outside and it makes you realize what a magnificent, magnificent world that we have.
Didn't those guys do a great job? I really appreciate the time they put into getting that video put together. Hope you enjoyed that. So I wanted to start with talking a little bit about what is a management plan for a lake. So we've got a graphic here that kind of identifies the process that we're going through with this. So to start off, we need to identify the stakeholders. Who are the folks that really care about what's going on around the lake, and who are the folks that can work together to affect change? Once we identify the stakeholders, we have to gather information and identify the concerns that they have about that particular lake. Once those concerns are identified, then we need to develop goals, objectives, and actions that we're going to take to make those changes. We need to evaluate possible solutions and different alternatives that can be done to meet those goals. And then, most importantly, take action. Make those changes, get to work on the plan that's been developed. But it doesn't stop there. We need to continue to evaluate what's going on at the lake, monitor the success of what we've done, and be looking for additional things that can be done, what was successful and what was not, and what do we need to do differently. At that point, reassess and modify. So it becomes a circular process. As we develop this plan, this is going to be kind of at this stage right here of evaluating the solutions and alternatives. That's going to be the plan. But the process is going to continue beyond that. And most importantly, throughout that here in the center, we need to keep the public engaged and informed on what we're doing. So for Lake Poinsett, who are the stakeholders? The three boards that we have are the Lake Poinsett Association, the Lake Poinsett Sanitary District, and the Lake Poinsett Water Project District. And as you heard on the video, those three groups have been active around the lake for a long time, working on their different areas and their purposes and their mission. But they've come together for this management plan, for the task force that's been developed, to try to pool their resources and their efforts and energies to really make a difference around the lake. They've partnered with East Dakota Water Development District to, in particular, look at the water quality, but East Dakota is a project and a stakeholder on this. And they've also engaged the state and local government. We've got 2 state agencies right now that are sitting on the team that's working on this, and we've engaged the counties and townships, and we'll be presenting information to them as we keep moving forward with this. Once those stakeholders to work on the team were identified, then we needed to start working on gathering that information and reach out to the public to identify the concerns and issues that all of you have. And to that end, we put out a survey earlier this year. I want to express a big thank you to everybody that participated in that survey. We had 340 responses, which I thought was fantastic. It really spoke to the interest and the passion you all have with the lake and pulling together to make this plan a success. So thank you very much. We got some great information from that survey. So some of the things that were identified as what we want to look at under this plan, those concerns, through the survey we were asking questions about the water quality around Lake Poinsett, the water level, recreation opportunities and concerns, what amenities you have versus what additional things maybe are needed out here. We asked questions about the tourism and development around here, what's working, what's not. We also wanted to gauge your thoughts on the infrastructure and the public services. And by that, what we mean is the water and wastewater services out here, the roads, the internet, electricity, things like that, that once you build a community like that, those are essential for the quality of life. So we also wanted to ask some questions about your thoughts on the infrastructure and those services. And finally, last but certainly not least, did anyone have concerns about safety around the lake? And so through identifying those potential concerns, we were able to drill down on these issues and get some information from the survey. And as I mentioned, keeping the public informed and involved throughout this process is critical. So the first public outreach that we did was on June 8th, the open house. We shared a little information about each of those different broad areas that we were looking at and hopefully got folks thinking about, again, what's working and what's not. And then the survey that helped build on the work we were doing with the survey. And then we held a public meeting on September 14th. And again, thank you to everyone who came out. And this here is the presentation that we gave. And what we did during that September 14th meeting and in this presentation here now is share the results of the survey and some of the findings that came out of that. So the first area that we were asking about were water quality concerns. 285 out of the 340 respondents, which is 84% of the people who responded, said they had concerns about the water quality around Lake Poinsett. We asked what people's perception of it was, not necessarily looking at the testing or anything like that, just what is your feeling about the water quality around Lake Poinsett, generally speaking. The largest percentage of answers we got were that folks thought it was average. But we did have 79% of the people rated it average or better, which I felt was encouraging. The water quality is good, could be better, and that's what we want to focus on. We also asked people about what gauges your perception of water quality around the lake. And we got a wide variety of answers, everything from clarity of the water, how well can you see through it, to the color, any odor, and algae was the number one thing that people raised as a concern with impacting the water quality. We also asked folks if you felt that your use of the lake was affected by the water quality, and overwhelmingly, 98% of the people said the water quality impacted their use. The better the quality is, the more they're going to want to use it. 69% of those folks said it impacted their use moderately to significantly, which I thought was important to hear. So we also asked for people to kind of build on the answers that they had given on this. We had a lot of multiple choice questions to hopefully make it easy and streamlined to answer it. But we had some open-ended questions too, where we really wanted to hear what you thought and get a little bit deeper information on some of the answers you were giving. So I'm going to share some information on that, and the way we're going to present this is through a word cloud. And if you haven't seen a word cloud before, what it does is it takes kind of all those words that people answered, and the things that came up the most are going to show up as the biggest and boldest words in a word cloud. And so, not surprisingly, algae was the number one thing that people raised a concern with. People also raised concerns about runoff from agricultural uses. They brought up concerns with zebra mussels as an invasive species in the lake, weeds growing and impacting their use of the lake, chemicals, algae blooms, manure running into the lake. Those were all raised as issues, and that's represented through this word cloud here that you can see. So taking all the information that people shared on their concerns on water quality, what we want to do is look at what are our primary goals for Lake Poinsett based on those issues that were raised, and what are our priorities to help meet those goals. So the goals that have been identified are to protect the water quality that we have, since folks feel like it's at least average, we need to protect what we've got. Where we can, we want a goal of improving that water quality, and then reducing the algae to improve people's enjoyment of it. So some of the priorities that we need to focus on to help meet that is completing the sanitary sewer system. As we heard in the video, there's been a lot of work done on the sanitary sewer system, but it's not complete. There's still people using septic systems around the lake, and completing that work will keep some of that bacteria and pollutants out of the lake. We want to find some ways to manage runoff into the lake and reduce nutrients where we can. By nutrients, what we're talking about are nitrogen and phosphorus primarily. Nitrogen and phosphorus in a lake work much like they do in fertilizer on your lawn. They make the grass grow and they make it green. When we get nitrogen and phosphorus into a lake, it makes the algae grow and it turns the lake green. So keeping those nutrients out will really help protect the water quality and reduce that algae that we're seeing. The next issue that we asked about were water levels in the lake and whether or not folks had concerns about that. And as you can see, it was pretty well split, everything from very concerned to not concerned at all. But overall, 55% of the people that responded felt that there was just too much fluctuation in the water levels. 2/3 of the folks, 68%, said that the water levels did impact their activities on the lake from moderately to severely. And 50% of the people that responded to this said they were concerned about flooding and property damage. So in looking at the water levels, what are the goals and priorities that we identified? The goal, to maintain a consistent water level in Lake Poinsett. And the priorities for that are to maintain recreational opportunities. We want to keep docks available. We want to have swimming beaches still available to us. We need to protect against property damage, and we need to protect the shorelines. So the next area that we asked about in the survey is recreational concerns, and asked about how people use the lake. So you can see this chart here. We asked about a lot of different types of uses and asked for people to respond. And as you can see, the purple one right here was the number one answer, and that reflects boating. So we had 141 people say that boating was one of the ways that they use the lake. We also asked about fishing. And if you look at these three right here, that reflects the way people fish. Boat fishing, shore fishing, and ice fishing on the lake are all important to people. Swimming was the number 2 use on the lake. And then we had a few folks that talked about hiking, picnicking, biking around the lake. So to that end, we asked about what kind of additional facilities would you like to see to enhance the recreational opportunities. And you can see these first 3 here all involved trails and paths. So this is lakeside trails. The orange one here is bikes or jogging paths around the lake, and then hiking trails. So 3 of the top 4 answers involved trails and paths around the lake that people wanted to see additional opportunities like that. Interestingly enough, the number 3 answer was actually pickleball. There were a lot of folks responded saying they'd like to see more opportunities for pickleball and some courts for those kind of activities. We also asked whether or not folks felt that there needed to be a limit on the type and number of boats around the lake. And as you can see, we've got a resounding yes on that. That came out as the biggest, largest word on the word cloud, is that yes, they felt that there was a need for reducing that congestion and the type and size of boats. We also asked people to elaborate on that concern. And so they brought up things like jet skis, bright lights on the lake that were shining into homes and shining at night, concerns about wake zones, about fishing tournaments, airboats were brought up by some folks as a concern. So these were some of the issues that were raised as part of that. So what were the recreational goals and priorities that we've identified from the responses that we got? For the goals, we want to improve and increase recreational opportunities around the lake and improve safety around the lake. And some of those priorities were more trails for biking, jogging, and hiking. There was a lot of interest in that. People want to see that. People want to see pickleball courts. More and improved docks were raised as an amenity they'd like to see. And overall, folks wanted to see improved enforcement of the requirements that are already out there, such as underage use of jet skis, wake zones along the shorelines, bright lights after dark, and making sure fishing tournaments are properly regulated. We also asked folks about the available amenities, what you felt that there needed to be more of around Lake Poinsett. The things that people identified were grocery stores, bait and fishing supplies more accessible around the lake, home repair services. We've got a lot of folks that are starting to make this more of a long-term, even full-time home, and they need repair services for their home. And public playgrounds were another thing identified. And we also asked folks about what you don't want to see. And so some of those things were shopping centers, a theater, a dog park, bike rentals. We asked if there was interest in that, and folks said no, they didn't feel like that was needed around the lake. We also asked folks, are there other amenities that you feel are needed that we haven't asked about? And overwhelmingly, one of the biggest answers that we got was fueling stations on the lake, that there's a need to be able to gas up boats, jet skis, things like that, right on the lake. And interesting, the issue that they raised was that they felt there'd be less chance for pollution by having a fueling station right on the lake, because you wouldn't have people carrying tanks of gas out to their devices and trying to fill them up. So that was brought up by a number of people. Folks also brought up that they'd like to see more restaurants around the lake. Pickleball came up again, as well as more bike and jogging paths. So what are the amenities, the goals and priorities that were identified through this? So bottom line, the goal with providing amenities is to improve quality of life around the lake and enhance the enjoyment of Lake Poinsett. And some of the priorities to achieve those goals would be providing additional restaurants, fueling stations on the lake, additional playgrounds, and additional hiking, biking, and jogging trails. The next area that we asked about was tourism and development. And we asked if people felt that it was a positive or negative impact on Lake Poinsett. And people were pretty much across the board. Overall, the majority of folks answered positive, followed closely by slightly negative, and everything in between. So there was very wide views on whether or not tourism and development was a good thing for Lake Poinsett. 42% of the people said the state of tourism at the lake was good to excellent, but nearly 58% that said tourism should not be promoted or developed any further, though things are just fine the way they are. Concerns that people raised about, especially additional tourism and development around Lake Poinsett, were zebra mussels and other invasive species. When you've got people bringing in boats and watercraft, there's always the opportunity of dragging those species from another lake into Lake Poinsett. People raised concerns about the development of trailer parks and private campgrounds around the lake. People want to see the beach be kept clean. Folks also raised an issue about rental homes, verbos, Airbnbs, that kind of thing around the lake, that large groups were coming in could be noisy and disrespectful of the other folks around the lake. And that was raised as a concern that maybe that needed to be regulated a little bit more closely. And then finally, a lot of folks raised the issue of overcrowding, specifically mentioning like Okoboji in Iowa, that lake has become extremely popular and gets a high level of use, and they don't want to see overcrowding issues that some lakes experience. So the goals for tourism: to support tourism and development that enhances the vision for the lake, and to prevent the overcrowding experienced at other lakes. And the priorities that were identified to help support those goals: have local input into planning and zoning decisions, enforce the ordinances and state laws that are already out there, regulate rental properties a little bit more closely, minimize the spread of invasive species, and ensure that they have the opportunity to voice concerns to the local decision makers. As I mentioned, we asked about infrastructure and public services. Overwhelmingly, the biggest concern that was raised through the survey was the roads around Lake Poinsett. People were concerned about the condition of gravel roads, the potholes in the paved roads, dust control, washboarding. Was there enough maintenance of the roads? There's a lot of different entities that are responsible for the upkeep of the roads between the counties and the townships, and that maybe there's not a consistent level of quality of the roads around the lake. And a number of folks raised concerns about the amount of taxes they pay versus the benefits they get, especially related to the condition of the roads. "59% of the people that responded said they were not satisfied with the condition of roads and the safety of the roads around Lake Poinsett. With the sewer system, we asked folks about what they knew of the sewer system. One of the questions we asked was whether you're on the Lake Poinsett Sanitary District, whether you have a septic tank, or do you know what you have? And I was actually really pleased that nobody answered that they didn't know what they had. They knew they either had septic tanks or were on the sanitary district. And honestly, that was good to see, because quite often people feel that that's an out of sight, out of mind service. So I was glad people did understand how their wastewater was handled. And we asked people about their satisfaction of the sanitary district. 67% of the people said that they were satisfied or very satisfied with the service that they get through the Lake Poinsett Sanitary District. We also asked about some of the other services that are provided. 72% of the people said that they were happy with their drinking water service around the lake. 87% said they were happy with the garbage service, garbage pickup. And 89% of the folks said they were happy with both the electrical service and the internet. The needs that were identified through the survey were that we need to complete the sewer system around the lake. I think from an engineering standpoint, from a water quality perspective, I think we knew that coming into it, but I was really pleased to see that come out of the discussions with the general public and the answers that you all provided on the survey, that you understand the importance of having that service and what it does to protect the lake. Another need that came out of that was a fire station nearby. that there are enough people that are around Lake Poinsett now and spread out enough that there's a concern about the responsiveness of emergency responders. They're having to come from nearby communities, and that could be wasted time getting there. So folks raise the issue of needing better emergency services right on the lake, including a fire station. So the goals with the infrastructure is to have safe transportation around the lake and an effective water and wastewater service. The priorities to complete those goals are to complete the sewer system, maintain the existing sewer system, and those are identified separately because to a certain degree they are separate issues. It takes money to do both. And right now, I think what we're seeing is that the sanitary district is really putting their focus on maintaining the service that they have, which is absolutely critical. There's been a lot of money invested in that system and you need to continue to maintain it. But that hasn't always left enough money to complete the work. So those really are two separate issues. We need improved maintenance of the roads around the lake, enforcement of speed limits, and then folks raised an issue about parking on Highway 81, about that crowding, the safety issue that creates. We also asked about any other issues or concerns that folks had and got a wide range of things that came out of that. Folks mentioned golf carts, and what was particularly interesting with that is we saw quite a range of how people felt about golf carts. Some folks raised the issue that there needed to be more enforcement of the laws on who can use it and how golf carts can be used. People raised issues with underage kids driving golf carts, with golf carts being on state highways and creating a safety issue. Other end of the spectrum that we saw is that people felt that there was over enforcement of this, that, we're out here to enjoy ourselves around the lake. Golf carts are a quick, easy, efficient way to get around, and people shouldn't be cracking down on it. So we definitely saw a wide range of opinions on the enforcement of golf carts. Law enforcement in general, making sure it's safe, making sure speed limits are enforced, wake zones around the lake, fishing limits, all of that kind of thing. People raised a concern about the condition of some of the properties around the lake. I think everyone really wants to see this be a beautiful, well-kept place, and if there's properties that are not being kept up well, that's a concern for nearby residents. Folks raised an issue about the level of taxation versus the benefits that they receive. And then, not surprisingly, a lot of folks raised concerns about development around the lake. In particular, they mentioned private campgrounds and the marina that had been proposed near the lake. Again, emergency services came up, and then the rental properties like Vrbo and Airbnb. And the primary thing that we kind of heard over and over was that residents around the lake want to have a voice. A lot of folks are not considered full-time residents, and that makes it difficult for them to have a vote or even at times a voice with their local representation. So that was something that people really wanted to see come out of this as a way for them to have a voice on what happens around the lake. One of the things that we have set up on the Lake Poinsett Management Plan website as a way to give folks a voice and to continue to communicate and be involved in this process is we're using something called Social Pinpoint. And the way that this is going to work is you can add a comment onto this site on things that you would like to see. So if you have a suggestion on this would be a great place for a park, or this beach needs to be cleaned up, you can leave a comment and you can actually mark it where around the lake you have the issue or concern. You also can just make a comment about how you think things are going, or give us feedback on the goals and priorities that we've set through the plan. And as people post those things, they'll be publicly available, and others can go in and give it a thumbs up, respond and comment on things that have been said. So if somebody says it's a great place for a park and somebody else agrees, they can chime in and share that. And we feel like this is going to be a great way for you to continue to talk about what you want to see, continue that process of evaluating and monitoring how things are going and sharing with us as we put the plan together. So this is available on the Lake Poinsett Management Plan website, and we encourage you to start making use of it. We look forward to hearing the feedback from everyone. And then now to come back to that original graphic and kind of let you know where we're at with things on the lake and with the management plan. So we've talked about who the stakeholders are in this process, including all of you in the public. Gathering information through the survey and identifying the concerns. I thought the survey really did a nice job of highlighting concerns and issues that you want to see brought forward and improved. So out of that survey, we've developed goals and priorities, and we went through that today, what's been identified. And we really would like to hear back from folks. Do you agree with these goals and priorities that are identified? It was really important that we first figure out what we're trying to fix, what we were trying to do, so that we can then move forward on evaluating those solutions and alternatives. And that's where we're at right now, is we're going to take those goals and priorities and evaluate solutions and alternatives. And that is going to become the written management plan. So we're very close to that point in the process. This is what we're going to be working on over the next few months, is putting together that plan based on those goals and priorities that were identified through the survey from the stakeholders. And then to continue to keep you all informed and engaged on what we're doing, we'll be coming back next late spring, early summer to present the draft management plan, talk through some of those solutions and alternatives that have been identified. Again, get your feedback and input on that. And then we're going to work on finalizing the plan, and that'll be ready by September 1st of 2025. And that's kind of where it ends as far as developing the plan, but it also is where the work truly starts as far as beginning to take action on those identified priorities. And then as things get implemented, take a step back. Is this working? Could we do it differently? Do we need to do more of whatever we were doing? And then reassess and modify, and perhaps even start the process over again at some point. So that's where we're at. That's what our path forward is as we finalize the draft document and begin the work. And so finally, what's next? As we've already talked about, we'll be evaluating those solutions and alternatives over the next few months and drafting that management plan. And then we're going to be coming back to all of you in June of 2025 to go through that draft plan, talk about those solutions, and again, get feedback from you on, are we heading in the right direction? With the goal of having the final plan done by September 1st of 2025. During the public meeting on September 14th, we also had a question and answer session after this presentation was given. We will go ahead and post our notes from that and share that on the website as well. So hopefully you can at least get an idea from those notes of how the question and answer session went. I thought we had a really good discussion, got a lot of good feedback and information from the folks that attended that. So thank you to all of them. And with that, that concludes our presentation here today. I thank you all for listening, for joining us for this, and continue to keep us informed of your thoughts and concerns and ideas that you have as we go forward. Thank you very much.